Welcome to the Hidden Museum of World Histories. Today, we're going to talk about another inexplicable mystery. On a cold November afternoon in 1944, the men stationed at RAF Seething in Norfolk, England, looked up and saw something they would never forget. A B-17 flying fortress drifting silently out of the clouds. There was no radio call, no distress message, no sign that anyone inside was even aware they were approaching an airfield. The bomber circled once, slow, controlled, almost graceful. Then, without warning, its landing gear lowered. The aircraft aligned itself with the runway and touched down almost perfectly. No pilot, no steady hands on the controls, just a silent, heavy bomber rolling across the tarmac with the confidence of a veteran airman. Mechanics and MPs sprinted toward the aircraft, expecting the worst: injured men, smoke, maybe fire. But when they opened the hatch, they froze. Inside the bomber, every seat was empty. There were no bodies, no blood, no signs of panic. Parachutes hung neatly. Harnesses lay unbuckled. Lunches were still half-eaten. Sandwiches, thermoses, everything exactly where it had been hours earlier. And yet, the crew was gone. The engine still ticked with warmth. The cockpit was clean, untouched. It was as if the crew had simply vanished mid-flight, leaving the aircraft to fly itself. Investigators quickly identified the bomber, a B-17 from the U.S. 91st Bomb Group. That morning, it had taken part in a bombing run over Germany. But according to mission reports, the aircraft had suffered an engine fire over enemy territory. Smoke filled the fuselage. The pilot ordered the crew to bail out. All men jumped. They later turned up scattered across Belgium, shaken but alive. But when they were debriefed, they all told the same story. They believed the aircraft was about to explode. They swore the wing was burning. They thought the B-17 was going down in flames. Yet the bomber that landed in England showed no burn damage at all. No fire, no major system failure. So how did a plane the crew believed was dying fly more than 300 miles on its own, descend from the clouds, and land by itself, wheels down, on a runway? Pilots who flew the B-17 were baffled. Yes, the aircraft had an early autopilot, a device called the C-1 system. But the C-1 could only keep the aircraft level. It could not land the plane. It could not lower the landing gear. It could not throttle down for a perfect approach. And yet, someone or something had done all of that. Some suggested that a crew member stayed behind, but the plane had been thoroughly searched. There was no one on board. Others theorized the bomber simply lost altitude gradually and happened to align itself perfectly with the runway. But this doesn't explain the gear deployment. It doesn't explain the steady descent. It doesn't explain the timing. What happened in those final silent hours of flight remains one of the greatest aviation mysteries of World War II. A bomber abandoned over Germany, arrived intact in England, and landed itself with supernatural precision. The official military report concluded that the landing was a freak accident, an extraordinary sequence of mechanical coincidences. But veterans, engineers, and historians who've studied the event for decades still say the same thing. A B-17 can fly itself, but it cannot land itself. Not like this. So what guided the ghost B-17 back home? Was it luck, a mechanical miracle, or something else?
something we still don't understand. One thing is certain. On that cold November day, a bomber with no living hands at the controls touched down as smoothly as if a ghost had been flying it.
A mystery from the darkest days of war that remains unsolved to this day.